Monday, July 27th. I'm Rem.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, privacy, security, SSL, and private keys.
Let's do this. You know what?
What, Scott?
It was warm today.
About froze mom.
Actually, it was warm yesterday. Yesterday was so warm. About melted my motherfucking dick off.
Slightly less warm.
Still, you know what was the worst today? Like, work was just blah, everything sucked, right?
That sudden random thunderstorm around lunchtime?
No. Actually, that part, lunch was cool because they felt sorry for us at work being all blah. So someone went out and got us some lunch with company monies.
Ooh.
And they got me some pancake. It was very nice.
Pancake for lunch?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. They were really good pancakes, too. Came with butter and syrup and everything. But, no, and then, I left work at 6 instead of at 5. I walk outside. I didn't think it was going to rain today, right? It was warm, and it started drizzling a bit when I walked out the door, and I didn't have an umbrella or a hoodie. Usually I have one or the other, and as long as I have the umbrella, I'm totally cool. But if I have the hoodie, it's like, but at least I'm all right.
See, I didn't run in any rain, but I was basically...
I left the office, just immediately started raining, and then it rained harder and harder as I walked towards the train. I was just like, fuck.
Man, I was already
I stay at work late, and then you rain on me?
I was already home by then. There was no rain.
I know, right?
The funny thing is that crazy thunderstorm rolled through the city, right? So I have my phone out. Everyone's looking out the window because the lightning struck near our building, so it was super loud. So I look on the weather radar, and there's basically this tiny dot of red over New York City and nothing anywhere else.
Yep. All right, I guess that's it for today's BS.
But, for anyone who is wondering what's going on here, you might have seen us at Otakon where we did some amazing panels. Geeknights is 4 nights a week. This is Monday night, which is science and tech and neckbeards and Linux and all that stuff. So if you're looking for our coverage of Otakon or our upcoming coverage of Kineticon or our upcoming coverage of PAX, Otakon will be this Wednesday. PAX will be some Tuesday in the future, after PAX happens. And, you can listen if you want to, but this is Monday night. We talk about neckbeards and Linux.
I'm curious as to where the neckbeard meme started because, did Daryl Surratt actually start that?
The thing is, that was a meme.
Or was it or did he get it from somewhere? Because
that was definitely a meme at RIT.
I heard neckbeards on Twit recently.
Really? I wonder if it's spreading again.
Yeah, actually, John C. Dvorak said throat beard and then switched it up to neckbeard.
Throat beard? That is clearly someone who heard it, didn't understand.
No, apparently people in the chat room, in the Twit chat room during the Twitch show were telling them throat beard, neckbeard. So.
Huh. Yeah, I definitely...
There could be some, AWO Geeknights listeners.
I recall very distinctly hearing the term at RIT long before Geeknights.
Really? I never did.
I heard it more than once. In fact, someone pointed out to me that I had grown a neckbeard because I had, in fact, grown
I'm
a
talking about
neckbeard.
in relation to Linux users.
Well, I was at RIT, and I was a Linux user.
I know, right? Oh, wow, my headphones just started working a lot more than they were a second ago. That's strange. All right. So
you're going to just throw that in there where I can't easily edit it out?
Yeah, that's fine. It's
Okay.
good. It's good for the show.
But anyway.
So it's time for tech news?
Yes, it's tech news, tech stuff, but I have an
God, it's been
anecdote.
so long since we did any shows. There's just a bajillion news
And
about
I have
everything.
a very interesting anecdote from work, actually, of all things.
All right.
In relation to tech. Because, when you get back from a long vacation, and, we haven't done a Geek Nights in a week and a half, but... Now, I show back up at work, and you always have that kind of conversation with the coworkers of, so were there any disasters while I was gone? And there was. But I can't get into all the details, but the kind of thing that only happens in, a lab practical in college happened at my work while I was gone.
Wow.
Imagine a situation. We have 3 environments, a UAT environment, a research environment, and a production environment. The exact same problem, the same symptom, happens in all 3 environments simultaneously, and the end result is that all 3 were 100% unrelated to one another, despite the fact that at the level 1 and level 2 analysis, they appeared to be the exact same problem, and in fact, there was an unrelated 4th error that was non-impacting in 2 of the 3 environments that was unrelated to either of the problems.
Uh-huh.
This was the kind of thing, in a class on the exam, they'd be like, what if blah happens and blah happens? What do you do? What could it possibly be? But it was in the real world.
Obviously, you investigated and eventually figured it out. Well, they did.
Well, yes, because we're very smart. But this was one of those situations to where I don't think most people could have solved it.
I could have solved it with enough time.
Yeah, we had to solve it before the market opened.
It's better than our problem at work, where basically it's like, well, this is fixable with lots and lots and lots of working.
Nah.
There's no like answer that we can't solve. It's like we know exactly what's wrong. It would just take incredible amounts of time and work to fix it.
But this is
so
like
what do we do?
This was like the equivalent of, imagine if images stopped working on like your outbound like your web server to the public on all your different websites. And it turned out that every website you run had its images broken independently by an unrelated problem.
Yep.
That was basically the equivalent of what we had to deal with.
It's like you think it must be you, but it's not you. Every website out there had its images broken.
Yes.
All right, so tech news, right? I guess we should talk about, there's like been a bajillion tech news over the past week or whatever, but I think one of the most pressing ones is very recent, and that is the most obviously the flame war-rific AT&T blocking of 4chan.
Now, I don't know who said it first. I think it actually might have come from Fast Karate, but someone equated AT&T fighting with 4chan as a T-Rex fighting a massive bacterial infection.
Yeah, someone wrote that somewhere on the internet.
Yeah.
Basically, the situation, it seems like now that all the information is out, it goes something like this, right? AT&T is an internet service provider. Apparently, there was a DDoS attack coming from AT&T ISP subscribers to one particular 4chan server.
I think it was the IMG server, which as far as I can tell, it's B, and I don't know what else.
Yeah, bad stuff.
B definitely stands for bad.
Yes. So AT&T saw this DDoS attack emerging from their network, so they blocked that, right? Of course, what they blocked was, I guess, HTTP GETs outgoing to that 4chan server. Or something like that?
Now, as far as I can tell, it's more likely that they blocked that IP, which just hosted the images for a couple of the boards on 4chan.
Yeah, so people were trying to go to 4chan who used AT&T as their ISP, and they couldn't get there. It wouldn't work. And, it brings up all sorts of net neutrality. It's like, hey, AT&T, it's not up to you to decide what sites I go to. And it's like, even if there was a DDoS, is it really up to AT&T to protect 4chan's server? I mean, that's 4chan's problem.
Well, more likely, say they saw a DDoS arising from this, and maybe just to protect their network, they blocked it at the pairing level.
It's true. It's true. But, it's like...
And, I mean, what do? You're caught between a brick and another brick.
Couldn't you block it in another way that would not prevent regular, legitimate users from going to 4chan?
Scott, that's the nature of DDoS, that because of the fact... Basically, a proper, well-executed DDoS is indistinguishable from popularity.
It's true.
Absolutely 100% indistinguishable. There is no way to know.
Well, I mean, remember Google said when they got to the Michael Jackson searches, they thought it was DDoS.
Yes, and this is becoming more and more of a problem as the use of the internet and the use of media democratizes and people become more tech savvy, but sources of information are still confined to a very relatively small number of websites, and data flows are confined to a relatively small number of peers and small number of IPs and small number of aggregation points. People think that the internet is like this, end to end, but really it's very tiny endpoints connecting to very large endpoints through very small pipes.
Yep. Now, the thing is, though, even though it is true that a very well, properly executed DDoS is indistinguishable from popularity, the reality, I think, is that most DDoSs are not very well done. And if you actually spend some time and closely inspect them, like you look at the packet, below just the destination, the header.
One, deep packet inspection is incredibly costly.
It is incredibly costly. However,
I mean, even turning
I'm not talking about actual deep packet inspection by the server. I'm talking about by a human being. Just look at it in your Wireshark or whatever, right?
The thing is that the amount of time that adds to your response basically makes you already a non-actor in the situation. I mean,
because you could look and you could see, everything this DDoS is sending out, the packets all look exactly like this, right? And these normal people sending out packets look, different. So,
except even most often, that's not the case, because what are they sending? A GET?
Well, who knows what they could be sending.
Plus, I mean, even on a local level, I mean, within a corporate intranet or something, let's say, someone's using up all your internet. It's not that trivial to figure out right away. I mean, you might have some sort of proxy that logs stuff, but that gives you a huge performance hit. So what? Maybe you turn on IP accounting? That's also a huge performance hit just to see who's talking the most and then figuring out what's going on.
Yeah, you could also just sort of have, just generic throttling, just slow it down so it doesn't kill you, but still let it go.
Slow it down. Slow what down? And does slowing down mean queuing up packets for later delivery?
No, it means some QoS type action.
Yes, QoS, Scott, basically means drop packets randomly.
Yeah.
That often doesn't end well.
Yeah, but you could like QoS just the 4chan packets, something like that.
Yeah, but even then, that's not so easy. And when you're an ISP, 4chan is no less legitimate than, I don't know, myporn.orgnet.
Yeah, but if I was an ISP, I would definitely have advanced tools and people to deal with that.
What
kind
advanced
of thing.
tools, though? There's nothing terribly good for that. And
My giant brain.
I mean, it basically comes down to these kind of fuzzy statistical analysis. And no matter what you do, you're going to piss someone off. And as attacks get more sophisticated, there's absolutely no way to determine a DDoS versus legitimate use.
Yep. At the very least, you could call 4chan and like talk to him. Like if I saw DDoS going at someone's server and I was an ISP, regardless of how I dealt with it on my network, whatever decision I made, I would call the person with the server and notify them. I'd be like, if I noticed it was like Google, I would call Google on the phone and be like, hey, Google, yeah, this is ISP number 3.
All right, point the first. Point to the first, Scott. Have you ever tried calling someone based on like some company? Try calling Google. There's no red phone in the industry.
There should be a place to call for that specific problem.
All right, Scott, but it's per server. So, all right, Google. Maybe Google has a red phone. One, do you know how many people are going to be calling that for BS?
Well, no, but I think, the fact is everyone has there's sort of like these standards a little bit, right? And that you're supposed to have like an email address that's like abuse at and another one, So I think we need...
Scott, here's the problem.
Some sort of standard for...
I don't think we can because the signal to noise ratio is so high already that if you have a standard, people will just hit it with their BS all the time.
No, we just need a standard, in between network peoples, not for normal peoples, just for network peoples to, contact each other.
All right,
to make sure the internet's
So
goes.
who would AT&T have contacted? Because it's not another network. I mean, I guess they could contact what? The ISP?
Google is a network.
All right,
I guess they would probably call someone at Akamai, actually, because Google's all Akamai. So.
Yes, so then what? They have so much to deal with anyway. Or what about this 4chan situation? Who do you call? The ISP that hosts them? You got to figure out who that is.
Yeah, you probably just call their hosting company.
All right, so you got to figure out who that is. You called their generic number. It's like an 800 number. Now what?
Well, they should have a number for calling with network problems where the network people.
All right,
can talk to
now they have to staff that number with humans.
Yeah, it's in the network operations center where they already have telephones.
That costs money. It costs a lot of money. They have to pass that on.
Yeah, but it'll be an equal cost for everyone because everyone will have the phone.
But
to
Scott,
call
that raises the cost of everyone. So then I offer an ISP.
But it'll make everything better for everyone also.
Because Scott, it's the tragedy of the commons. Everyone offers it. Great. I make an ISP. I don't offer it. I'm now cheaper than everyone else and therefore better.
You make it a require. You should regulate it. Actually.
Oh, wait, regulation now? That opens a whole extra can of worms.
I would be in favor of that one regulation.
All right, Scott. So what? I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, what if the problem is coming from 4chan itself? Whose responsibility is it to cut off that server?
Whoever owns a server.
All right, so how do I determine? So anyone who owns a server that is in any way on the internet in any capacity has to pay to have a 24/7 hotline for people to call that is public?
Yeah.
So we've got to have a hotline. Someone can call your cell phone.
Linode owns our server. We don't own it.
Linode. So the colo company has to do it.
They're not a colo company. They're a hosting company.
All right, so hosting companies.
Yeah.
What defines hosting company? I mean, I can have a web server through our dynamic DNS out to the internet.
Yeah.
So now do I have to do this? How do I regulate that?
If there's a problem and someone looks up your phone number, they can't find you, then,
Who's going to maintain this lookup?
It's in Whois. Put in the Whois. Where the abuse and all the other email addresses are.
The thing that's basically completely useless and unreliable as it stands?
I think the Whois. Actually, I think the ICANN should be better about enforcing the
Who's going to pay for that?
We're already paying for the ICANN. Might as well pay more. It sucks as it is.
I don't think regulation is the answer.
I think a small amount of regulation would be good. People
the
on the internet's major network players need to have some way of just communicating with each other when shit goes down.
Yes, and defining who a major network player is already effectively impossible.
I think there's a lot of obviousness.
God, look at how many times, even at the high level, where the two like level 2 ISPs will stop pairing with each other over some bullshit.
Yep.
How are you going to regulate that? What if they just hang up on you and then they say, yeah, the phone didn't work? Or what if they just, they say, all right, here's the situation. Let's say I, as a company, call level 3 or Cogent or someone because I have a problem. I'm seeing a DDoS and it's coming from their network. You know how long it's going to take me to get through them to show them what the problem is such that they can deal with it? It is much faster for me to simply block it, thus saving myself the problem. And by acting in my own self-interest, it is not in my interest to work with anyone in any good faith. It is in my interest to cut them the fuck off.
Yeah, but blocking is it's it's bad for all sorts of other reasons.
Is it? But what if you identified something that is coming through your network that is substantially degrading the entirety of your network, and you have reason to believe may be substantially degrading the behavior of other people's networks, and you have the capability right now to temporarily stop it and sort it out?
Yeah, but what if you were wrong and it was actually people searching for Michael Jackson after he died?
Well, here's the other problem. There's the whole simulacra
I think
situation.
it's better safe than sorry. There.
No, safe than sorry in what direction? Here's the other simulacra situation. If you cannot tell the difference between legitimate traffic and a DDoS, they are effectively the same thing, and blocking them has the same effect, because legitimate traffic and illegitimate traffic are basically indistinguishable. So the Michael Jackson searches are equally useless and causing an equal problem to the 4chan DDoS.
Well, one of them is censorship, and one of them is, protection.
But is it censorship to block something that is basically preventing your network from functioning properly?
If your network isn't functioning when there is legitimate activity occurring, then your network is just not capable of doing what it needs to do.
Scott, no network is capable, because we've gotten to the point to where there is more data people want to send than there will ever be capacity, at least now.
And the fundamental problem is exposed.
Well, the fundamental problem is that there's no way to distinguish, there's no regulatory way to solve it, and currently there's no technological way to solve it other than being very, 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 very smart.
Well, the thing is, despite all those things you just said, there aren't DDoSs just going around killing everyone. Everything's kind of works still.
Part of that is because networks are actually fairly proactive in stopping these sorts of things.
Yeah. Oh, let us continue to another news, and let us hope that the 4chan people, don't ruin the internets.
So remember a while ago there was that whole brouhaha where, oh shit.
Brouhaha.
Yes. They deleted all these books from people's Kindles remotely.
Oh, you want to talk about this BS?
Like George Orwell's 1984. Oh, the horror.
Oh, the irony. I think it would have been more ironic, though, if they deleted Fahrenheit 451.
I believe someone reported that they also deleted that.
That was just got to be a joke.
Well, the whole situation...
Because that would have been the headline over the 1984 headline.
Well, here's the deal, as far as I can tell. Basically, one, people are angry about the fact that they have the ability to delete content that you bought. This is the thing that people who are advocating DRM...
iPhone has it. Kindle has it.
This is the thing people who are advocating DRM said would never happen, and here it is.
Yep.
This is like the most egregious. Here it is. You bought something, they just delete it with a big fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little more complicated than that, because what they deleted was 1984, which was being sold through their store by someone who had no legal right to sell it.
Well, actually, it's kind of weird because that book is in the public domain elsewhere in the world, but it's not in the public domain in the U.S.
Well, thus the other problem of the public domain. And we've talked a lot about this in our forum. We haven't really brought it up in the show, but...
I'm pretty sure we have.
Not in any great detail. We're getting to this point to where I feel like the public domain as an institution is almost overbroad and inconsistent, and I feel like usually I am of the mind that we need to reduce creators' rights in order for the public good. This is one situation where I feel like we need to increase creators' rights, and I think the public domain really needs to be replaced by some sort of... I think an artist has a perpetual right to notability and a perpetual right to attribution.
Well, no one's complaining about attribution. People are complaining about, the ability to just use the frickin' thing.
Yes, but the fact that the
to
public
read
domain...
the book. They don't care. They don't want to change the name on the book to say 1984 by Scott Rubin. They just want to fucking read it.
They can, but the problem is that the public domain is both overbroad in one way and yet so far out into the future and so inconsistent that it's useless anyway, so the whole thing's moot to begin with.
Yeah. Well, I think one interesting thing about this situation, right, is we usually, we talk about, a regular book, photo, if I steal a regular book from you, now you don't have the book, right? We're always comparing the digital reality to the physical, manufactured reality.
Yeah, but then there's the meta argument
but
of
the thing is, right,
denial
look,
of...
with a physical book, right, let's say I illegally printed up copies of 1984 and sold one to you, right? And then I go to jail or I get sued or whatever happens to me for my illegal, right? They're never going to come and take the book away from you.
And they perfectly legally can, because the receipt of stolen property is itself something that can be remedied. So if you get stolen property, the police can just take it from you with no compensation.
But they never will. You're going to have that book. How many? You get a bootleg CD, they're not going to come and get it from you.
Well, the thing is they can. And in a lot of cases, like if you buy a car and it turns out the car was stolen, you're just out of luck.
So then... if
you
that's
can
the
sue
case,
the person who sold it to you, but they're probably in jail and indigent
Yeah.
at this point anyway.
So if that's the case, right? The stolen property, right?
yes,
then
this is a situation where
if you want to talk about it that way, then these people got off easy by getting a refund and having the book taken away.
Well, here's
from
the
them.
thing. My take is that they were technically in the right. They were technically correct, the best kind of correct. But there was probably a better way to go about it that wouldn't have generated all this bad press and would have made everyone happier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, they were negligent in making sure that people who selling books on the Kindle had the right to it, right? And second of all, right,
Now
this is what happens when you have a closed platform, right, is you look at something like, the Kindle or the Apple Store, right? If you actually want to have some sort of control over what content shows up in your, what books are on Kindle, then you're now responsible for what books are on Kindle. Amazon was responsible for that book being there that wasn't supposed to be there. If they would just be cool and let anyone put whatever the fuck book they want on the Kindle, right, without interfering or anything, then Amazon would have no responsibility, and it would be up to that person who illegally put the book there to go get in trouble.
Well,
and that is
Amazon
why
would still have responsibility if someone bamboozled them and sold something through their store that they shouldn't have.
Well, yes, but no, it's not Amazon's responsibility. If Amazon just let anyone put any book on the Kindle, right, without making a yes or no decision, then Amazon's got nothing to do with
Scott,
it. It's the DMCA.
No, because what if they set up to where Amazon, you can put whatever book you want on the Kindle trivially, and it'll just work. But they also have their store, which you pay for them to get a book from it.
No. I'm talking about there's a store, and anyone can put anything in the store, and that's it. That's what I'm talking about.
You still run into legal trouble in that situation by facilitating the sale.
No, because that's what the DMCA does. The DMCA says if you're making a platform for distribution and you're not, controlling it editorially,
Scott, the
then
DMCA,
you're not responsible for, people
to a
using
degree.
it.
As far as I've read, the DMCA only protects you in certain specific situations, and you still could run into trouble, I think.
No, actually, it's a specific thing. Is that it's set?
Plus,
that's why
that's a situation where the law encourages something that, in the end, is actually in more bad faith toward the authors.
Yeah, but no, that's why Google was so genius with YouTube, right? Google doesn't say this can go on YouTube, this can, unless it's illegal child porn.
Yes, but
or something.
Scott, notice how they still have to take things down.
No, they don't take it down, right? Google doesn't take it down. The copyright holders are doing all the policing.
The copyright holder does all the policing, but once the copyright holder makes a legitimate request, Google has to follow through and take it down.
Google doesn't take it down. The copyright holders have an interface through which they do the taking down.
Yes, but Google created that to comply with the law.
No, they didn't do it to comply with the law. They did it to, keep those copyright holders from, bitching and moaning.
No, Scott, because if Google had not created that interface for them to do it directly, then Google would have had to do it.
No, they wouldn't have.
In response to a complaint, they would have.
No, in response,
In the DMCA, if someone makes a complaint to them, then they would have to respond. Their genius was making a system to where they don't have to actually ever themselves deal with the complaints. The complaints are dealt with directly.
Yeah, the thing is, you don't have to, respond to the complaints unless someone actually comes and, sues you or whatever.
Well, no, if someone responds, the safe harbor thing is basically that if someone makes a complaint, then you have to take it down.
You don't have to take it down until they, prove. Just sending a takedown notice isn't enough unless, that's basically the nice thing you can do is, take it down. If, someone sends you a takedown notice, they still have to go to, if you say no, they have to go to court and prove that they actually own it.
Well, Scott, no, here's the thing.
If you don't want to.
As far as I'm aware, and I'm pretty sure I'm more right on this than you, if someone issues you a takedown under the DMCA and you don't, there's certain things you have to do in good faith or else you lose the safe harbor provision.
No, they have to go, you can just be like, whatever, and completely ignore it. And they have to go and prove that they actually own it, to make you take it down. But the takedown notice is just sort of a nice thing. It's like, hey, before, we go to court, I just want to let you know. And if you're pretty sure that, they own it and you don't want to deal with that bullshit, then you take it down.
So 30 seconds of Googling proves that I'm right.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't? All right. In order to have an allegedly infringing website removed from a service provider's network or to have access to an allegedly infringing website disabled, the copyright owner must provide, and then they give this list of things you have to provide, which is, the name and address of the complaint, the material in question, a statement under penalty of perjury that you're accurate in your claim, and all that stuff. Now, once notice is given to a service provider, or the service provider discovers the infringing material itself, they are required to expeditiously remove or disable access to the material.
Yeah, but the point is that you know the original point was that if you are not editing your content, if you're just letting people post whatever they want, you have a safe harbor. You don't.
Yes,
have
the safe
to...
harbor still says that. And remember, it gets tricky when there are commercial interests involved, especially if you facilitate the transaction. But when it comes to the safe harbor specifically, if you're given a takedown notice, you have to take it down immediately, and then the person.
That's if the takedown notice is legitimate. What it says, they have to say that they're definitely the people who own it.
Yes,
under...
but it's not difficult to make a legitimate one. There are very few criteria you have to meet.
Yeah, but there's plenty. Well, I could just make up takedown notices for nothing and send them in.
Yes, you can, and if you do, you know what? The people you send them to have to take the stuff down at first. But then,
what am I sending stuff for someone else's shit?
You can do that. However, you doing that is illegal, and then the person whose stuff was taken down can file a counterclaim, and then they could basically sue you for perjury.
But it's basically it's a situation where it's less work to just take all the shit down than it is to...
No, Scott, it's not just less work. It's that if the ISP, the person who is providing the place where the stuff is, does not immediately respond and take it down, they're responsible. So they'll just take it down no matter what. And then it is your responsibility as the person who put the stuff up in the first place to file a counterclaim and get it back.
The point is that if they just let anyone who wanted to post books to Amazon,
they would still have to take down things based on infringement notices immediately.
Perhaps they would have to take it down, but there is nothing in there that says they would have to remove it from all the Kindles.
Well, the thing is that I could see situations, because remember, safe harbor, all it does is protect you from being sued.
Mm-hmm.
But you still, at the same time, distributed what could be classified as stolen materials.
But I didn't distribute it. The responsibility for that distribution goes to the person who posted it, not to me, because I'm safe.
Only if you don't have the means to remove it. Because if you do have the means, then you're not. Safe harbor doesn't give you protection from that sort of thing or from remedies. It only protects you from monetary damages.
Yeah, you can't sue me. Someone else put that, copyright infringing video on YouTube,
yes.
And then it was taken down. And now, even though someone out there might have downloaded that video from YouTube and saved it and kept it around, we don't make them remove it from their computers.
Right now, I can show in a court of law that you have the ability to trivially remove it from everyone's computers who download it.
Well, that's the thing is I think it was a big mistake was even putting that ability in the first place.
Yes, but I have a feeling...
By using the same DRM, right, that you were attempting to use to, prevent copy protection, to prevent, copyright infringing activities, you've actually sort of screwed yourself.
Well, Scott, the thing is, it's a catch-22 because I have a feeling that very few publishers would have agreed to even be on the Kindle in the first place or through their store at all if they didn't have this ability and this DRM.
I can't believe it's one thing that astonishes me, right? Is that you think about this, right? Copyright. We've been talking about this for how long? Over a decade. It's the year 2009.
Scott, this is a simple answer.
This has been an issue since the late 90s, 97, 98.
I know where you're going. There's a trivial answer as to why. One, the majority of the population of the world doesn't care. A very small subset of people even know it's an issue. And that's it. No one cares, so it'll never get changed.
And even after over a decade, the record companies have figured out that DRM is completely stupid. And their sales really haven't gone down since getting rid of DRM. And in fact, recently an RA person was like, DRM is dead. Hello, welcome to, 2009. I'm like, hello, welcome to 1999. Yet the people with books, the people with movies, they still haven't learned the same exact lesson in over a decade. So I'm pretty much like, well, if you're that slow to learn your lesson, just fuck you. I'm just going to steal all your shit.
Well, no, Scott, part of it, I think, is that with music, they were basically damned if they did and damned if they didn't. So they went with the damned if they didn't, but I don't think they're really any better off either way. And when it comes to everything else, there's no incentive. There's absolutely no incentive to drop it because it's one of those tragedy of the commons situations. If one person drops it, then all the publishers will go to the people who still have it. Everyone has to drop it at the same time, or the people who drop it lose out from the publishers. And the publishers don't care, and the people don't care, so nothing changes.
I think the thing is they underestimate how much the people do care. And
I think it's an echo chamber. Nerds care, and no one else does. No one else even realizes there's a problem.
Well, see, that's the thing is I think people don't realize there's a problem. But then until it gets in their face, people didn't realize iTunes DRM was a problem until they tried to, authorize that fifth computer or, they tried to re-download something that got deleted when their hard drive crashed. People don't realize the Kindle DRM is even there at all. That it's not an issue to them until the book they paid for gets deleted. Then suddenly they wake up to DRM. And I think over time, more and more people wake up to DRM. And in each individual arena, in music had already enough people woke up in music to get rid of it. And I think it's only a matter of time before enough people wake up to it in movies and wake up to it in ebooks. And they'll have to get rid of it too. And it's just, you just have to wait for these people to wake up
you can
over
say
time.
it's a matter of time, but the fact is that right now we're nowhere near that, so nothing's going to change.
I think it's going to change.
I don't think it is because, one, how few people own Kindles anyway? It's a relatively small proportion.
And the other thing that they're just so retarded is that, look, anyone who's going to buy books is going to, for their Kindle, is going to buy them whether there's DRM or not. And anyone who's going to pirate them is going to pirate them whether there's DRM or not. It's just
no, because there isn't as nearly as wide of a piracy network for books because only nerds care and no one else does. Think about it. Most people don't even like things like Kindles because they have the stigma against reading things on a non-piece of paper.
Yeah, the Kindles actually sound really well, though. So
it is selling really well, but
I
it's
do want
not...
to point out that they had to drop the price on it. Perhaps it's not selling as well as they expected.
But Scott, while it's selling really well, the majority of people don't care, don't want any device like that.
Well, this story is all over the news, so
It's already out of the news. It's only in the tech news now. No one cares anymore.
It was on the regular news.
Yeah, for a brief flash, and people care more about New Jersey than they ever will about this.
Oh, New Jersey, that's something to talk about.
But anyway, things of the day. So, you know that apocryphal tale about how when NASA was trying to figure out a way to write in space on the space shuttle in the Apollo program, they came up with a multi-million-dollar program to make the space pen, and the Russians just used a pencil, and how that was completely apocryphal and not true, but it's a very resonant story.
It is an apocryphal story. However, I do want to point out the space pen does exist.
It does, but...
We did invent that.
Well,
for that reason.
But it has its uses. I can write upside down continuously.
Great.
Yeah, it is great.
Not really.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
But anyway, here is basically the same story, but it's not apocryphal. So if you want that sort of story to tell as an anecdote, here we go. In China, there was some regulation saying that buses have to have devices to allow you to break a window in the event of an emergency and escape. And you've seen these things. They're like a specialized little hammer with like the pointy bit and
Why
the
don't
claw.
they just have the removable windows where you like pull the clamp off the side of the window and push it out?
Well, one, those are a lot more expensive than, what is on existing buses.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And two, even in the U.S., a lot of buses that have those windows also have the hammers somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Because, the window might be in the wrong place. They can't make all the windows that way.
Yep.
And also, it's China. Not every bus
Don't
is
they
the
have
same.
the school bus rear exit action?
You can, but that's not enough.
I mean, U.S. school buses, they have the, you can push out the window also.
You basically need the rear exit, the side exit, the top exit.
Yep.
So they have this regulation to save lives because obviously there are a lot of crappy old buses. And look,
Lots of crappy old buses.
but think about it. A simple solution is to require that all buses have means of egress in the case of an emergency, and you could have kind of the last resort regulatory option of the special little hammer to break the window and get out. Well, it turns out those little hammers are being stolen in every single bus they put them in because
Why would you steal a hammer?
Why not? It's there. It's trivial to grab. It's a relatively useful tool. It's basically like this pick, and China's relatively poor, especially in the more rural places.
Why don't you put the hammer in, like, the little glass case that says break in case of emergency?
Just break it and take the hammer, and also that's more expensive. And think, all right, someone breaks it and takes the hammer. Great. Now I have to replace the hammer and the glass.
But the alarm goes off and you arrest them for
Oh,
stealing the
now
hammer.
I also have to pay for an alarm.
It's just a little ding 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 ding.
Yeah, Scott, that's a
5
lot
cents.
when you multiply it by number
Well,
of
maybe
buses
China
in
could buy their own crappy, bell ringy things instead of selling them to us.
So, Scott, multiply that by number of buses in China. You have a problem. So, some enterprising bus companies took bricks, painted them yellow, put the Chinese characters on them to be, in case of emergency. And these 100% met the regulatory requirement. And as the bus company said, no one's going to steal a brick.
I would. It would be a cool brick. I would take one.
You're going to carry this brick around? What are you going to do? We stole a brick at RIT. You know what? We put it back. That brick was more of a pain in the ass than anything.
But this brick is yellow and has cool Chinese writing on it. That would be like
Scott,
a souvenir when I got back to the U.S.
Cool Chinese writing in China is the equivalent of stealing a brick that says, like, BD on it.
Yeah.
BD is cool?
No, but if I'm not Chinese, I'd steal it. Chinese people don't want the bricks, but U.S. people would want the bricks.
Yes, and how many U.S. people are going to ride some podunk bus in the middle of China?
I would.
Will
Well, why
you?
else go to China? I want to get the real experience.
Anyway, if you want that tale and you don't want it to be apocryphal, here you go. And there's a good picture of the brick.
Well, you know how you were just talking about Russians using a pencil,
Yep.
and we made a space pen.
Which isn't true, but anyway.
Right. Well, we made, IBM computers. You know what Russians made?
BIM computers.
I don't know what they made Russian computers. And if,
China tried to make computers too. They had the Dragon Project back in the day.
Yeah, well, that was more recently.
That was a while ago. They tried to make their own chips, not x86.
That was less than a decade ago. These Russian computers, we're talking...
A decade?
Less than a decade
Scott,
ago.
Even less than a decade. What was the world like in 2002?
Not bad. These computers by the Russians were made in the 50s and mostly the 60s.
Da, da, da.
I mean, you think about it, right? And there's this whole thing that goes on with Soviet stuff because they were cut off from the world. So it's like they didn't have, it's like you look around the world today, right? It's like, okay, if I go to, say, Japan or China or Australia or to Europe, right? We generally have a lot of the same stuff. Maybe their exact model of DVD player would be a little different. Maybe there's some, unique local stylings. But in general, it's like, oh, look, a Sony TV. There's not a lot of, it's not that kind of, like there's not some electronics company that is exclusive to, say, France. You can't see that stuff anywhere. Maybe there's, car models that are only sold in other countries. But, it's getting very globalized. But when the world was cut by the Cold War, Russia had all this shit that no one else had, and we had all this shit that Russia didn't have. So when you look at the Russian computers, it's like, wow, they didn't have no UNIVACs or anything like that. So they got all this cool stuff. And one interesting, there's a big article here with a few pictures. One interesting thing from the article was that, early on, of course, they were trying to, basically out-invent the United States in terms of computer technology, right? But eventually... they just told the Russian computer scientists, like, give up, just copy everything IBM does, and then try to improve on it. Stop trying to beat them by developing from scratch. I thought that was pretty humorous.
Well, I recall way back in the day playing Aerobiz and Aerobiz Supersonic on the SNES, and I'd always play, like, a European country or America or something, and I'd always see, like, in the Eastern Bloc, there'd be these plane companies other than Boeing and Airbus and such. And McDonnell Douglas. But I can never buy the planes. Whenever I tried to send a representative there, they'd be like, we can't buy Eastern Bloc planes. And there was always this mystique about them. So one day, I played as the Russians instead, and I could buy Eastern Bloc planes. Let me tell you, those Tupolev and Ilyushin planes were the biggest pieces of shit. They were more expensive and worse.
Yeah, that's generally how it works over there. So... if you want to see some more expensive and worse computers from Russia from the 60s, the likes of which you've probably never seen, this is a good article for reading and looking at the pictures.
It's weird, though, how as much as, the Soviet Union was basically this economic disaster, but the styling of the Eastern Bloc, in my opinion, for whatever reason, was pretty damn cool.
I know you look at these things, right? And, I mean, Univac's pretty cool, but these things, they look like they belong in, like, some awesome sci-fi movie.
Like Soviet block apartments and Soviet cars. There's this mystique about cool
Well,
Soviet
you know those clocks they
infrastructure.
have, right? The ones where it's, like, just vacuum tubes, and the vacuum tubes have numbers in them, and it looks like some sort of crazy Frankenstein thing.
I love those things.
Yeah, I gotta get one of those. But, they just had, like, this great style to it. And I don't know, like, why the style is great. Like, is it the aesthetics of the stuff itself, or is it the fact that we didn't see stuff like that in this side of the world? Or I wish I could figure out what it is about it that makes it so awesome in the way it looks,
at least
despite
to
the
us.
fact that it came from a terrible situation.
So SSL, there was an article about self-signed certificates and
boy.
SSL and all that stuff on Slashdot.
Will we get in trouble if I just call it a racket?
Racketeering is a word I may or may not have used.
All right, let me
this.
explain the situation here so people know what this is about, right? You know how sometimes you go to a website and you want to buy something, usually when you're buying something, but also for other situations, and this lock appears in your web browser, or maybe your web browser turns green and it says, you are secure and safe, right? That's what SSL is. Now, what SSL does is it does two things. It does a lot of things, but it does primarily two things. The first thing it does is it guarantees that the website you think you're at is the website you are at.
Well.
So let's say I'm at Amazon.com and it turns green. That means I know I am at Amazon.com, and none of this information I'm typing in to the form on the website is going to say Google or who knows who else, unless Amazon gives it to them on the back end, right? The communications between me and that web server are just between me and that web server. There's no one snooping snooping on it or anything like that. And the number two thing, so it's anti-phishing, right? The number two thing it does is it has some sort of symmetric encryption, right? So if someone is just like snooping the packets, they just see this garbledy, and they can't see, you know, what I'm typing in and spy on it, right? And that's what SSL is supposed to do, and that's why if you are engaging in a secure transaction online, you know, typing in your credit card number, your social security number, anything along those lines, you want to make sure that you set a little lock up in the, you know, location bar of your web browser. But also, you want to make sure that the URL in the location bar is the website you think you're dealing with. You know, even if it's secure, if you send your shit to some shady site, well, you know, I mean, I could give a secret encoded message to some, you know, criminal on the street, and I still gave it to, you know, it doesn't help me. No one else got it but the criminal, but hey, that's how things go.
So here's the problem with the way SSL really works, is that to get that certificate, you basically just have to pay some arbitrary person enough money, and then they give it to you.
Yep. See, let's say, I mean, there's nothing preventing me from just making a certificate and setting it up.
Yep, they're called self-signed certificates. I make the certificate, and I sign that it's legitimate. But web browsers, because of the way the internet is, basically, like, you know, those locks or the special things that they'll show, like Firefox now has that nice, like, blue bar that appears next to the URL to show you
they
that
have a
you're super
lock,
safe.
and then they have an extra special lock. It's like the double lock.
Basically, you can't get that unless you pay one of these companies for their certificate or get them to sign your certificate.
Yeah, it's basically, it doesn't cost them any money to do it. All they do, it's just like you're paying for a rubber stamp, a lot of money for a rubber stamp, and you have to pay for it over and over again because your rubber stamp expires. And they charge a lot for it. Now, and it's technologically no different at all from your own rubber stamp that you can just, I could spit out like a million of these things in a second with like a shell script, right? Now, the thing is, right, if I rubber stamp my own certificate, right, well, how do you know that, you know, it's really me? I could just use it on whatever freaking website I want, right? There's no guarantee that, you know, the certificate is actually for reals and is totally safe. You're basically, these rubber stamps from these companies are basically, you know, okay, we are VeriSign and we guarantee that this is really Scott Rubin and it's really frontrowcrew.com stamp. So it's basically, you know, if you see a certificate of my site that I signed, it's basically you have to decide, do you trust me? But, you know, if you trust VeriSign, this company with rubber stamps, then you don't need to worry about whether you trust me or not because you know that VeriSign is trustworthy. So really, it's sort of like this trust in economic network in a way. You're paying for trust, and you're trusting people who pay money.
Now, this wasn't a problem until relatively recently in general because pretty much it was the kind of this cost of doing business. And the only people who really used this sort of thing were businesses that were collecting credit card information or something like that. And
yeah, only people doing real e-commerce cared about it, and anyone who's doing real e-commerce was making money because they were selling stuff, and they could afford to have a website.
We've got this dual problem of people using shoddy certificates and bad URLs to get people, or, you know, spurious domains like Amazon.com.
Yeah, you know, you ever go to a website and it says, like, the certificate has expired. The certificate may be fake. That's because someone doesn't want to pay up, or they're legit. They're actually, you know, crooks, and they're trying to trick you.
Or they're incompetent. There's all sorts of reasons.
Yeah,
but
there's all sorts of reasons.
the problem really is that, one, there's so many issues that this is kind of just like, this show is basically just us kind of getting all the issues out there, and we can't really talk about any of them in super depth because each one deserves an entire Monday show in and of itself.
Basically, also, just, you know, to sum up the episode in case you don't want to listen anymore, we're pissed because we have to pay a whole fucking ton of money if we want to have one of these things.
It's not that much money.
It's a lot of money. It's like hundreds of dollars. You
Plus,
keep
there
paying.
are places like, I think, Start SSL, which will actually give you one for free.
Really? That's nice.
And they're
But does
trusted.
it really work in all the browsers?
It works in most browsers. They're pretty well trusted.
And can I get the double plus lock or just the regular lock?
Probably just the regular lock.
Yeah, I want the double plus lock.
That one costs more.
Yeah.
Because they're all
Think
these.
about that. I had to pay money to make a symbol appear in a web browser.
But at the same time, it's this kind of barrier to entry. The old keep the riffraff out, to where only legitimate businesses can get them. But
yeah, think about it. The cost of this to Amazon is basically zero compared to what the money they actually have. But the cost of it to someone like me, who's, you know, just running a little old website, is enormous compared to my hosting cost.
Now, it's tricky because on one hand, it's a little anti-competitive. It's kind of this downward pressure against startups. But on the other hand, it really stops a lot of the very trivial attacks that would bring the whole system down, because to get that lock cost so much money that if you're making 1 million spoofer spam domains, you can't afford to do that because the margins on scamming are already so low.
Yep.
So, but one of the real issues here is that because it's kind of this, it's not a scarce supply anymore. I feel like the solution is that registrars should basically give certificates to whoever buys the domain from them, and that's the end of it.
Yes, I agree. However, the problem is, if a domain changes hands or if a domain expires, they have to revoke the certificate.
The certificate should automatically expire at the intervals of the domain expiring.
Yep.
And they issue new ones as they are still expiring.
I completely agree. You should just get a perfect SSL certificate with the domain, and then it's up to you, the person who runs the website, not to share the certificate around or do it the wrong way.
But there's this whole extra problem on the side of that. In the old days, if the certificate was self-signed, either it would just accept it or it would pop up a little warning, you click OK. But most of the time, a self-signed certificate or a shoddy certificate means either you're at Amazon instead of Amazon, or you're on a corporate intranet that didn't want to pay for a certificate, or you're on some guy's website who just wanted to have e-commerce.
Now, here's the thing, though. Let's say we give a certificate to everyone, right? Couldn't we just make the whole web SSL?
We
everything?
Could, but there is a performance hit.
There is a performance hit.
And there's no reason to.
The other problem with it, I think, is that let's say everyone gets one of these and everyone makes everything secure, right? Well, then it's the lock is always locked. So there's no safe and unsafe situation.
Well, it also gets to the
right
point
now,
of,
a lot of the
it
power
comes back
of
down to the point of, did I type the URL right? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in the SSL now, in that most of the time you're browsing the web, it's not there.
But it's not security.
So when you're safe, it's aha, there's the lock.
But the root problem is it's never going to actually be security, because doing this will always end up being security through credit card as opposed to security through obscurity.
Yeah. Well, you don't want security through obscurity or credit card. You want security through fucking real security.
The thing is, security through credit card works pretty well in this situation. It really does work.
It works
on a
kinda.
whole.
It works better than nothing, that's for sure.
The problem is, this whole separate problem, there's the article on Slashdot that this study shows that pretty much everyone just fucking ignores this, and they don't even know what that lock means. They just ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, web browsers, have been trying to do a better job of, changing the user interface of the security. i.e., if there's a bad ticket, will make the whole location bar red. And Firefox is a lot bigger.
Firefox is
I mean, Netscape used to be this little tiny lock icon in the bottom right that would appear and disappear, and now
Firefox
it's
now will be
in your face.
Hey, this certificate is bad. And it gives you an error, and you have to click on 4 different things that are in different places to get past it.
Yep.
And it seems like the majority of people will just click on anything they can and keep clicking until they get through, because they just don't know.
That goes back to something that we talk about all the time, which is that most people who use computers don't read. If there's words on the screen, they will not read them whatsoever, no matter what the words are. It could say, warning, you're going to die, the computer will explode. They don't read it. All they do is, if anything pops up at all they do is click and click and click and click until it goes away. They don't read anything. They don't think about it, right? So no amount of popping up or visual cues or anything is ever going to get through to people who don't read. So the only way to actually make SSL work would be to actively say, this website is insecure, sorry, you can't go here no matter what, bye. And just not let them go, no matter what they do.
But then that basically prevents your web browser from being used on most corporate intranets.
Well, what I would do actually is, that's a good point you brought up about the corporate intranets, right? For a home user, maybe doing that is not so necessary. But if I had a company, I would set up the computers such that no one would be able to visit any site that had an expired or incorrect
But Scott,
SSL.
that basically unsolves the problem of, how do I...
Well, it keeps my company safe from my employees who don't read.
But you don't need that. But the problem here is that normal people in their normal homes need to know whether or not they're actually on Amazon.
Well, they don't pay attention anyway, so does it really matter? They're going to get fucked no matter what we set up.
Well, I don't know what to do about it. Because here's the situation where, too, if you give them the information, even if they read the pop-up, with stuff like certificates...
They have no idea what it means.
And there's no way to really explain it, because if you give the actual explanation, no one's going to understand what a certificate is or what it means. And if you give a dumb explanation, you dumb it down, they'll just say, What do you mean I can't go here? It's Amazon. Fuck you.
What I would do is I would put up a series of questions, right? And the questions would be like, are you 100% sure that you are actually
Firefox basically does that. It doesn't work. People just keep
The
clicking.
way it words it is not that plain.
It says there's an error. Do not continue. And if you just look and you click on like the nice looking answer, it doesn't let you go. You have to go back and click on the scary looking X. And even then you have to go. Then you have to say yes, I understand. You have to get the certificate.
So are you saying that since people will go through the trouble of visiting the site even with a bad certificate, we don't need to pay for the thing? We can just use the signed one, the self-signed?
We probably could. The problem is it's unprofessional and
it is very unprofessional.
it's also a
if
situation
someone
where
goes to your website
the
and
system works well enough to where security through credit card is still pretty viable. And if you're going to do e-commerce today, you should pay for one of these certificates.
Yes. Well, I do think though that while what we have is okay, and even though we should still try to find a better solution, I think that there should be sort of an Iron Monkey pricing system. Do you remember an Iron Monkey when he's sitting there, right? And there's a rich man who comes to get some medicine, and there's a homeless poor man, right? And he gives the poor man the free medicine, and he tells the rich man it's like 30 taels or whatever, right? And he's like, he got the same medicine for free. What the fuck? And he's like, hey, rich man, maybe you can't afford it. And he's like, oh shit. And he was too proud not to be, so he paid him up. I think that, the SSL should cost more for Amazon than it costs for me.
But then do we differentiate on the user side the difference?
On the user side.
Because if you do, we're in the same boat we're in now. It doesn't matter. That's exactly the same as it is now. And if we don't differentiate, then I pay zero because I have this, I don't make any money. I'm just some guy for Amazon. And then I proceed to scam people and make all this money.
Yeah.
So we're in this situation to where the system still works now and is going to continue to work for the foreseeable future, and relatively few people are affected by this.
It's basically a big old glass house.
But the system is someday going to...
it's a big old tower made of cards.
Someday, this is basically going to break down catastrophically.
The Balsa Wood Bridge.
And I don't know what to do about it.
What,
Also, independently, aside from all that, it is not trivial to set this shit up in Apache.
It's moderately troublesome.
I mean, I'm an IT
it's
professional.
only a little bit difficult.
I know how to do it. But even I have run into problems. Like, I had to set up a chain certificate, which I didn't even know existed.
Oh, those are bad.
So I had to basically set up a certificate, this root certificate, and then a chain of authority that went all the way down to my certificate. So I had these multiple certificates to set up. And
that's the worst thing is if you got subdomains, it's like sometimes you need to get more certificates. Sometimes you need to get like broader certificates. And like if we want to have a different certificate for like forum.frontrowcrew.com and frontrowcrew.com and
also there's the situation of some people
we got to pay again and again and again.
Some people who sell certificates are more or less reliable, and maybe a browser will stop trusting one certificate authority because they're bad. And
yeah, like, Firefox, the people who and that's the thing, is like the browsers really need to do something about it. Like, if the browser, let's say I'm Mozilla, right? I decide the VeriSign is trustworthy, right? So any certificates that are signed by VeriSign are going to get the green flag in Firefox, right? Well, why can't me, Scott Rubin, why can't I write a letter to Mozilla? They should have someone whose job this is, right, to handle this. And I can be like, hey, go look at my website. Here's my certificate that I made. And trust me because you see my website and you approve it, even though I didn't pay VeriSign any money. And they should have a person, if they want to be deciding who to trust and who not to in place of the user, then I should be able to apply for trust as a person with a website and a certificate to the browser as opposed to this,
well,
other
here's the
authority.
Thing. What would be nice is if a certificate authority basically like did all this investigation and hired like private investigators, and basically what they did is verify based on PIs and like spying on you and all sorts of craziness that yes, I certified that the person I gave this certificate to is the person they say they are.
And then once they do, you are now trusted and inside, and then you can make as many certificates as you want, and they'll all be trusted.
At the same time, they have to continue to watch you,
of
and
course.
They revoke that certificate the second you fuck up.
Right,
but
and you'll have a nice private key that you can use to sign all your certificates.
That would cost a lot of money, and again, no one can pay for that but the rich people.
That's something else to think about, right? Imagine if, I sign, let's pretend it's like some magical fantasy land, right? I sign all my certificates, you sign all yours, Joe signs all his.
Oh, the way PGP is supposed to work?
Right. Everyone signs their own certificates, right? And, everyone is sort of individually trusted. Now, right? So that means, let's say something crazy happens and someone breaks my private key. Well, only my certificates are in trouble. right now, if I get like the VeriSign private key, I can fucking make certificates for fucking, the internet is fucked. Totally fucked. And it's only one private key, just one, right? For like a lot of certificates. It would be much more secure if we had lots of different private keys for lots of different certificates from everybody in terms of encryption, side of the thing.
Well, here's another. What if we had trust through consensus to where everyone has their own private key and you can sign or trust other people's keys? So my private key, I trust the real Amazon certificate. So the real Amazon certificate has, 10 million people have trusted it. Amazon has the 500 people in the small botnet trusting it.
Oh, that wouldn't be bad. Like, because most people, most internet people wouldn't bother, right? But all of the web people would go around trusting certificates. Like, they'd be like walking around with petitions, like, "Hey, dude from this other website I know, trust me. Hey, all my listeners to this podcast,
now
we need you to sign our certificate and trust us."
You'd have this meta system to where you signing has weight depending on how many people have signed yours in this kind of clusterfuck.
Yep.
The problem with that is that where do my root certificates come from?
Basically, whoever has the most Twitter followers, it gets the most security.
Not only that, but all right, so I write a spam bot that just generates a billion certificates that all sign each other. So that doesn't work.
Yeah, but the thing is that wouldn't be attached to anyone in your web of trust. So your trust level for it would be 0 because you would have no connections to that insular network. See, it's a whole trust network situation.
The thing is, we can't really get into it, but the logistics of that and the math of that is
I could make that in my laboratory. Don't ask me to make it for the internet.
That would be one of those, like, everyone bands together for peace and prosperity.
I could make it in my laboratory, and it would be like that would be the kind of thing you would give someone as like a CS project in college. It would not be something that you would actually be able to make happen in the world. It'd be like, it'd be a good like question, like, here's the web of trust. How much should Joe trust Jake? He's like, well, Joe should trust Jake three trust.
3 trust.
3 trust.
Correct. 3 counts.
Well, how much should, Mary trust, Jake now? That, Joe doesn't trust Jake anymore. 0 trust.
Now,
it's like
one other way, again, what this really comes down to is identity. And way back at Open Everything, New York City, 2008, was it 2008? It was 2009. I think it was 8 because it was still warm out.
Was it?
Or was it not that long ago and maybe it was spring?
I think it was spring.
I already don't remember.
I think it was spring. Let's say 09.
I was wearing the shirt like yesterday. Anyway, the first Open Everything New York City. One of the things that I brought up and talked about a great deal was the idea that in the future, going forward, the most important thing to solve on the internet and in the world is identity. And the most important commodity in the world is being able to prove reliably who you are. And what it really comes down to is when everyone is born, they need to be given a USB key that has their private key on it.
What about when USB's done?
Well, when I say USB key, I mean whatever technology at the time. We implant a chip in you. It doesn't matter. You have to have scaling technology to where everyone is issued a private key that is used the way Social Security numbers are now, and you sign things with that. And if you lose it, you have to report it to the government, then they revoke it, and then they give you a new one. Maybe you have to reapply for it every 10 years the same way you do your driver's license, and it expires, and all that sort of business.
Mm-hmm.
And until we have some sort of thing like that, there's basically no way to solve this or 1,000 other internet problems.
And in fact, actually, if you think about it, right, if the government set up some sort of private key system for every citizen, and had all the public keys in this giant database, and everyone had their own private key in some secure fashion, a lot of the government's other work would go away. Like there'd be a lot of things they just wouldn't have to do if they could set that up and make it work. Like a lot of other things they wouldn't have to do so much. They would just be really easy because you just use the private keys and public keys for it. Like the mail. It's just, private keys to send mail, Oh, driver's licenses? Yeah, you don't need a driver's license ID. We'll just use your key, Oh, we don't, everyone, signing things, notaries, wouldn't need them. Wouldn't need the whole notary thing at all. Everyone could just notarize everything themselves by digitally signing it.
No, if you did it with an issued private key that was hashed with some
Social Security, wouldn't need Social Security cards.
Hashed with some biometric, then you eliminate pretty much every oh, great, we've solved everything.
Yeah, don't need social security cards. We don't, taxes, got to fill out all these tax forms. I mean, when you fill out taxes today, you still need to write down name, address, right? Imagine you just did your taxes and you just, signed it with your private key, and then the IRS, took a public key and said, "Oh, yep, this was definitely written,
Also,
these taxes are filed by Scott."
How bullshit is it that I sign something with my pen and fax it, and it's more reliable than like a PGP signature because people in court don't understand? Signatures and contracts, everything would be easy because if you signed a contract, it is mathematically provable that you signed it, and that's the
someone
end
was
of it.
digging around in my trash. They found some mail that was thrown away, and they applied for a credit card in my name. If they don't have my private key, how could they sign it? They can't. All these problems would just go away if they would do this one thing. That's it.
However, this
and people
one
worried
thing,
about government ID systems and all that sort of stuff. Basically, all we're doing is give everyone a number that you hold on to and never have to show to anyone. In fact, never should show to anyone, and should never be, under no circumstances ever be forced to show it to anyone, court, judge, police, government official. Nobody will you ever have to show that number. All you will ever be required to do is sign things with the number, then hand over the signed thing, which can then be verified with the public key. You will, and in fact, you will be strongly encouraged never to show the private key to anyone, not even family members, not even your own mother, nobody, zero.
And in fact,
so it's not like, a government issued ID card.
Obviously we can't have the midwife every time a child is born give them their key and then kill themselves.
No, you'd have to have some sort of system where, eventually you're not going to need this number when you're in, say, elementary school. Maybe, all right, we'll have some sort of system where you go into a booth and it's a sealed booth, and the machine generates the key, puts the public key in a database, prints out the private key somehow to give to you onto a device or a piece of paper or who knows what, and then erases it from its memory, and then you step out of the booth. It's that simple. There you go. Done. And you could use that to sign your SSL certs on your website, and people would know, that was definitely signed by this person, and if there's a discrepancy, they could look up in the government and, know who you are.
We've solved the problem. For the first time on Geeknights, we solved it. It's done. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
This is never going to happen.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says "Send me an audio" on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.